Greetings, everyone. I'm Dave Fortson, host of the GreenProofing Series. Very excited to be back in the saddle. January has been crazy in Santa Barbara, as I've shared with you before. We got so much rain in December, all of our rain for the year, and now it's been just sunny and gorgeous and amazing. A little weird that we haven't had any rain in January, but I'm feeling fired up, 75 degrees, not to make you all feel sad on the East Coast or anywhere east of Santa Barbara, but that's where I'm at. And back to here today to talk with another change maker in our space, Rex Raimond, director of TIFS. Very excited about this conversation. I've been just a big fan of TIFS and the philosophy and approach. But Rex, where are you calling in from? And welcome.
Thanks for having me, David. It's great to be here. I am east of you, as many people are, and I'm a little bit jealous of the rain because we could definitely use it here in Colorado. It feels like a major drought hitting us, and of course, people here are concerned when they don't see enough snowpack up on the peaks. So yeah, calling in from a little town, Louisville, just outside Boulder, Colorado, and things here are good. It's like an exciting start to the new year. We've got so many things brewing at TIFS. Can't wait to share some more of our updates.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right in. Rex, you've had a rich history. You've been across 5 continents. I'm just peeking over on my notes here. The Netherlands, countries, Netherlands, South Africa, UK, Zimbabwe, in the United States. You went from an environmental lawyer into the food system. Can you just speak a little bit about your personal journey, professional journey and really to, take that beautiful law degree that you paid so much for and move it into the food system and helping architect the future of food, finance, and regenerative agriculture. Can you just give us a little background, high level history to help inform our viewers about your journey as a professional?
Yeah, thanks. It's not always that you have a chance just to kind of share your own personal story, right? When we're kind of deep in our professional work and we're grappling with the complexities of the challenges that are immediately in front of us. But yeah, as you mentioned, kind of born in South Africa, so a little bit of that kind of African family history. Grew up in the Netherlands, surrounded by tulip fields. So if we are talking about industrial ag, there's a great example of industrial ag. And that was my summer work. I was out in the fields, kind of making a couple of bucks an hour. Just pulling weeds and actually kind of snipping the bulbs off of or the flowers of the tulips, so that all the energy would go into the bulbs, which is that's the commodity, right? So that was yeah, a bit of my upbringing and first exposures to food and agriculture and a kind of an industrial system of growing things. And then through my studies of law, international environmental law, really got into the yeah, what does it take to come up and create agreements amongst kind of very diverse interests? Because that's really what international law is about. There's no enforcer. It really depends on the adherence to international adherence to certain rules, the rules of conduct, the way we want to treat each other, the way we want to treat the world. And it's so that those ideas that have always kind of informed my work. So then in kind of practiced law for a while, land use planning, international environmental law. But then when I made the move first after studies to back to Zimbabwe for a while, I had the opportunity to spend kind of more time kind of with rural communities, kind of who are just kind of living the realities of what it's like to try to eke out a living in very kind of marginal areas, low income areas, and the connections between maybe initially for me the environmental issues, kind of water quality, deforestation, these the desertification, that became kind of much more tied to the realities of how do you kind of how different communities in this world make survive, going to make a living, going to take care of or have the opportunity to really take care of the natural resources that sustain them and sustain all of us. And that's really then kind of carried forward into my entire career, always looking at working at that intersection of kind of multiple interests. How do those align? Where do they diverge? How do incentive structures kind of incentivize certain behaviors? How do you start to change that through policies and laws, or structures of collaboration? And that's the direction that I've really ended up kind of moving in my career of like what's needed next, to overcome and solve some of the really complex challenges in our society, that results from many of the social structures that we've created, including laws and regulations, and again that gets to the incentive structures. So where finance goes, where where the resources exist, to really take care of land, water, air, soils. Um, Kind of what's the freedoms that we've created to exploit those as well, and where does that put us now, and what's needed next, especially in when we talk about food and ag. It's all about economics, food and ag, nutrition, sort of the essentials of life, and that's what's so fascinating about this work.
So, I want to dig right into the thesis of change at
Yep.
TIFS, transformational investing in food systems, for those
Hmm.
uh, out in the audience. So, what I love about your philosophy, and also still curious about the execution side, is that it sounds to me like the thesis is creating better bridges between the folks on the ground doing the hard work, between the folks on the ground and capital allocators, philanthropy, high finance, where in a world where um, wealth and money are really just determining who gets counted. They're determining, what matters really is like you can basically ask like, what's your budget? Where are you putting your money? And TIFS, it seems like, is playing both a role as like an architect, a builder, and a translator, right? Being able to
Hmm.
communicate, in the most fluid, legible way, the needs of the communities on the ground and the folks in the boardroom, or the folks in the banks, or the folks controlling significant capital and looking to make change. So maybe, in the spirit of that concept of what I assume is your thesis of change, uh, what am I missing, if anything? And two, the idea of building bridges kind of also begs a question: what's broken? Why do you need to build a bridge? Where have the gaps uh, been that TIFS is eagerly doing the work to build these bridges to open up flows of communication and capital to help systemically change the food system, which impacts all of us, right? Can you speak a
Hmm.
little bit more? Thesis of change, am
Yeah.
I characterizing it correctly? Or how would you paint a picture of what we're looking at and where TIFS is showing up, where uniquely in this space?
I love architect, builder, and translator. That's a really that captures it really nicely. So when we started 6 years ago, it was really about asking the question of ourselves and of impact and other and conventional investors of how to invest and activate capital for regenerative and agroecological food systems. That seemed at the time, the words regenerative and agroecological weren't really commonplace in especially in the world of finance. Kind of sustainable ag, maybe just kind of what we were talking about,
Yep.
but whole systems approaches and the kind of stuff that academics are doing around true cost accounting and as a methodology for understanding the outcomes of a whole system, in this case the global food system, that really wasn't being translated into financial logic. So we started really with those that disconnect between the logic models of finance, very transactional, show me deals. How do I organize financial capital to make these deals work? versus a more sort of systems oriented, agronomic, from the farmer's perspective. Like it's not just about the deal. It's also about the community. It's about me and my family's health. It's about the soil and the carrying capacity of the soil. So there are all these other systemic things. So there's a disconnect between the logic model of finance and the logic model of actually kind of producing food and doing that in a way that works with nature and supports thriving communities. So that was our starting point, and that put us sort of in this middle translation bridge builder role of how do we take language from one, translate into the language of others. What are the instruments? What's already happening in the field that is advancing that bridge building? And I think take 6 years later, now we're at this point of really being an architect and a builder of to kind of use that foundation that we and others and Regen Network and many others have laid over the past 5 or 6 years to start translating the signals from the ground into structures that facilitate the flow of capital in the right form. And when we're thinking about the signals that are there, is that we see more and more kind of research, and we hear the stories of farmers themselves who say, once I made the transition, my operation went from kind of making a lot, like losing money every year, to making money every year. So if that's the case, as a result of a transition to more regenerative approaches, why isn't everybody doing this? Well, it's because of some of the systemic lock-ins that make it so that create sort of currently a situation where a producer, a farmer is they're kind of on their own. Maybe they have peers that they can learn from, but their banker, the insurance sector, the market, sort of their buyers, they kind of have to figure out the farmer kind of has to figure out who they can work with in order to make it less risky for them to go through this transition process, not knowing exactly what's at the end of that process. They kind of have to walk the journey more or less on their own, and I think that's the piece that we're trying to, again, not alone, working with others, but that we're trying to solve. And there's some things that need to be built in order to make that easier. So one is, for instance, the terms of finance itself, right? So how do we kind of work with producers and finance providers to better align the terms of finance with the natural and the market cycles that the farmer is working within? Too often, we still see situations where farmers are heavily in debt because they have to repay their 1 year annual operating loan with interest and principal. And a rancher may actually have to sell part of their herd in order to have the cash to pay their banker back. So what if we just start to reconsider the terms of finance and allow that rancher or that farmer a bit more flexibility, time-wise and income-wise, to start repaying the interest and principal based on their revenues, and give them time to build their assets rather than extract from those assets in order to serve the terms of finance that are set by their banker. So there's some of these fundamental things in the way finance is structured that don't match the realities of food and finance. And that may seem, this example may seem um, is like kind of technical, related to one particular instrument, like an operating loan, but it's actually about really about rethinking and changing our mindsets with regards to the role and structures of finance to support food and ag production in a way that results in the desired outcomes of thriving economies, kind of healthy food, and farmers who don't have to take off-farm jobs in order to survive.
So when I'm curious, when you're, and I had the pleasure of sitting with your team here in Santa Barbara County, examining the retained producer income model.
Yep.
Zach Ducheneau had essentially piloted through the Farm Service Administration
Hmm.
successfully, and TIFS has picked up and helped provide a container for this new lending facility and mechanism. And it gave me some really interesting insight, working with you all and just poking around, talking to the farmers and talking to the capital allocators, and just trying to understand the language, the problem solution requirements, the real pain points. And I'm curious from your perspective, looking across numerous programs that TIFS is really incubating and holding, I think the spirit of innovation of like, which of these are going to work, which of these have the highest return.
Hmm.
What are some of the trend lines that you're seeing? And maybe you can communicate or share a little bit through more about this through the lens of like the personas, right? The agriculturalists,
Yeah.
what are
Right.
their biggest across your programs? What are you seeing as like trend lines there? And then the capital allocators who need to
Hmm.
be able to supply capital and think TIFs and its models are the appropriate vehicle from which to pilot, innovate, and open up new capital streams onto the ground. Just what can you give a sense of a high level of like 2026, what are you seeing, what does it feel like for
Mm.
both sides to find the right relationship to each other? What are the headwinds, what are the opportunities?
Yeah. I'm going to answer that question this way. I think for 2026, at least that what your question means for TIFs is sort of is a relentless focus on farmer success.
Hmm, great.
So that is about kind of the retained production income, the work that kind of Zach Ducheneau is really the visionary, and we're supporting him to build that model, build both the importer and the producer logic. Then we have some crop insurance innovation work, through what we call RALIC, the Resilience in Agricultural Lending and Insurance Coalition, and then we incubated the creation of Diversifund, a multi-asset financing structure that facilitates essentially kind of blended finance deals for kind of early stage or kind of new market opportunities that need multiple forms of financial capital. But I think what underlying all of the work is this question, and what we think these are puzzle pieces of the answer, is what facilitates farmer success in the sense that they have the financial bandwidth to do all the things they want to do and need to do in order to produce food and fiber and fuel in ways that are more in tune and more harmonious with nature, become more resilient, and results in economic health, economically healthy local communities. We think that these de-risking mechanisms like crop insurance innovation, um, the retained production income, and these alternative kind of fund structures are ways of translating and facilitating the engagement of financial capital in ways that support farmer success. And with maybe the other way of talking about that would be kind of maybe restoring or enhancing farmer agency
Hmm,
in being able to determine how they walk this journey towards a more regenerative future. So much of that agency has been captured by either the input providers that say this is the prescription that you need in order to optimize the number of bushels that you can produce per acre of land, or by their buyers, whether it's livestock buyers or grain buyers, to say like these are the prices, this is what you need to produce against, or by their bankers and their insurance companies who say this is the kind of production that we can finance and underwrite, and these solutions that we're working on together with producers are ultimately, I think, and fundamentally, it's about restoring the agency of the producer to make their own decisions and determine what will work with the land, the water, the crops, the livestock, the community, the local infrastructure, for them to start kind of making the transitions to a more financially healthy and environmentally healthy operation.
I love that. I love that framing of centering farmer agency or recentering farmer agency, and maybe can you maybe land us, before we head toward the
Hmm.
end of the call. I know I'm grateful for your time. We're going to run a little over because I'm really appreciating where this is heading. But can you paint a picture for us of like a couple of stories or even
Hmm.
one story, just of kind of beyond the technocratic, beyond the theory of change. You're
Yeah.
working with farmers on the ground and the financiers side, and you have success stories, right? You're already starting to see the material impact of this work. Can you just give us one example? You don't have to obviously name names, but just
Yeah.
share something else that helps illustrate the programmatic architecture translator power of TIFS, but it actually affects human beings on the ground and shifts how we do business with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some of the examples in the U.S. Midwest are great examples where kind of young, so the next generation in a farm family was hesitant or doubted that they could ever come back to the farm after going off to college because they didn't think that there would be a financially viable future for them on the family farm. But as a result of multiple pieces getting put in place locally, like the a local mill that provides access to a food grade oat market, that allows kind of oats to be reintroduced in the crop rotation with alongside corn and soy, which then kind of makes it easier to incorporate cover crops, and which then create forage opportunities and the opportunity to reintegrate livestock in those operations. With those changes, the this kind of next generation, this young rancher, kind of saw the opportunity to go back to the farm, to the family farm, and work on actually becoming a farmer and a rancher in a very productive multi-crop livestock integration um, operation with a healthy financial future, um, not just financially healthy, but also kind of personally, family, and community wise. Like health really kind of permeating sort of the whole situation where they could see kind of soil health restoring, reducing the use of chemicals on the land, lower exposures to chemicals and chemical residues. Just a healthy product that they are proud of selling to their consumers. So I think those are the things that we are now seeing happening all over the world, really. And I think the work for TIFS is to stay dedicated to the how can we support and accelerate those change processes by also translating that dynamic to opportunities for investors to participate in that change process.
Love it. Okay, you're the Rex crystal ball. I mean, it's hard to look, frankly, beyond like a few months from now for some
Sure.
reason. I'm just like trying to make it through
Yeah.
each day. But
Yeah.
12 months, 24 months, maybe a bit longer. Um, what are you seeing hints of in the future of how humans are relating to land, how
Hmm.
land and farmers are relating to the capital stack?
Hmm.
Is there any kind of exciting innovations that you're seeing? Are you seeing any sentiment shifts? Anything just that we should be paying attention to as where TIFS has a unique position to be able to look into at the ground level and the capital level, and
Yeah.
as you're playing architect and translator, you're probably seeing things that maybe not happening today, but we're not too far out from let's say, give us
Yeah.
some hopeful shifts of what you see as possibilities coming up that keep you up at night and keep TIFs moving.
I'll connect that to the great work that you're doing at Regen Network. What I'm seeing is the ripple effects of the refocusing on natural capital
Yeah,
as a critical underpinning of all other forms of capital. Right? Without kind of nature and biodiversity, water, soils, clean air, we don't have an economy. And it starts with the producer who is producing food, fiber, fuel, whatever else, kind of with those resources and in concert with those resources. And I see that rippling into all the way to the biggest global investment houses, like Norway's sovereign wealth fund, where they're translating that into natural capital and biodiversity risk assessments. But they're essentially talking about the same thing, and we're starting to see that ethereal and the really grounded realities of those connecting to each other in much more productive ways.
I love that. Well, and very thanks for the shout, Rex. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
even just philosophically, I had a conversation last week, and it's just something I keep sitting with. I don't quite know how to characterize it the right way, but it feels like so many of us are in some ways like trying to redefine what wealth is, and
Hmm.
at a time where like just the trappings of like crass wealth, right? And I have this many cars and planes and yachts and all the things, and so much aspirational like and basic and fundamentally extractive work is happening in pursuit of that wealth, and reminding us as humans and our connection to land and our ability to develop bounties of food and connection to land and connection to each other. That in a lot of ways it feels like we are redefining wealth by reconnecting ourselves to the land stewards who
Hmm.
are essentially stewarding the Garden of Eden that we have here on planet Earth, and reminding ourselves how incredibly good that we have it, and working in coordination and concert with Earth's natural systems. And, I'm just super grateful that TIFS on the, how do we execute and reconnect ourselves back to the land and to each other is, without coercion, without any gimmicks, but really just being like, what do farmers need?
Hmm.
What do farmers need to succeed, and to build agency and to activate their natural desire to develop uh, products and food and systems that are good for their soil and good for their families, and by extension that means that they're all good for us, because all of us have a plate in front of us three times a day of food, and reconnecting the power of that plate and what's on it to back to the farmer, all the way up into high finance. It feels like is a bridge that TIFS is creating. So really kudos to you and your team over there, and certainly excited to see what comes next. So you have the floor to close things out. Tell us any more. How do we find TIFS? How can
Yeah.
people engage? Like this is your chance to connect all of our watchers out there to what you're doing.
Thank you, David. Yeah, that was a great wrap up. Three ways. So, for if people are interested in capital deployment directly, investing, then our partners at Front Hill uh, Partners that manage the VersaFund, that's a great place to go. Then there's the sort of the field building innovation platform of TIFS. Um, Reach out to me to learn more about the work that we're doing. I can put you in touch with the really the iconic leaders that are building those innovations, like Tina Owens working on the crop insurance work, and Zach Ducheneau on the retained production income, and on financial structuring, working with David Cooper and others. And then there's going to be a third pathway very soon, which is where we're creating essentially a service agency to work really directly with advisory services on scaling very promising regenerative initiatives and the structuring of financial instruments that can operate alongside those regenerative initiatives as they're scaling. So really creating the very practical pathways that are, like you said earlier, kind of rooted in producer agency, and that facilitate and make it as easy as possible for investors to participate in those activities.
Great. Well, Rex, thank you for joining us on Greenproofing. Appreciate your time, and thank you to everyone who's watching out there. Please find Rex on LinkedIn. He's a great person to connect with, along with the rest of the TIFS team. But until then, be well, everyone, and keep regenerating. Thanks a bunch.